I am so happy to see you here today. We're going to hear a special story of God. And when we hear the stories of God, we have all the time we need, so we don't need to hurry. And we come to hear these stories of God because this is a special time. And in this time, we come to be with God, to listen to God, to hear the stories of God, and sometimes to talk with God. Now, in this time, like I said, we have all the time we need, and you can sit on your chair because this is your special space, and no one can bother you when you are in your special space. And you don't have to disturb anyone else because you have your special space. Now, I need to get ready to tell this story. And the way I get ready is to say these words of God. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. This is a desert box, and inside is a small piece of the desert. So many important stories of God happen in the desert that we have to have a small piece of it with us today. The desert is a strange and wild place. During the day, the sun beats down on it, and the sand is very hot. Oh, but at night, the desert becomes very cold. There's almost no water in the desert. And when the wind comes, it shapes and molds the sand. So the desert is never the same. When Moses led the people of God out of Egypt, they went to the desert, and they did not know which way to go. But when God gave them the 10 best ways to live, they were so happy. They had to find a way to keep the 10 best ways with them always. They thought they would guide them, and it would help them come close to God. So God told them to build a box. And they covered it with gold. And on top, they put 2 golden angels. And along the sides were 2 poles so they could carry it through the desert. The people wanted to be close. But you can't come close to something so precious without getting ready. So God told them to make an altar. And on the altar, they burned incense, which made a sweet-smelling smoke that rose to God. Now, they could go through the sweet-smelling smoke and come close to the 10 best ways to live in the presence of God, but that still was not enough to get ready. So they made a table. And they covered it with gold. And on the table, they put 12 loaves of bread, 1 for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And on the other side, they made a special lampstand. It had 7 golden candles on it, and they called it a menorah. Now, they could go between the menorah and the table of bread and through the sweet-smelling smoke, but this still was not enough to get ready to come to the presence of God. So they made a tent. And inside the tent, they had all the things to get ready to be with God. And they made an inside room and an outside room. And the inside room was called the Holy of Holies. The ark was kept there. And then, over the top of the tent, they put special coverings. One was purple and gold woven cloth. Another was woven goat's hair. A third one was ram's skin, colored red. And over all of this, they put one of goat skin turned into leather. Now, they weren't quite ready yet. On the outside, they put a great altar of sacrifice. And on the other side, they put a great basin of water. And now, when people passed by in the desert, they would just pass on by. Around all of this, they put a fence made of cloth so that they could roll it up and take it with them wherever they went in the desert. But they were not quite ready, because now the priest would go inside this special place called a tabernacle. And the priests began to wear special clothing. And when it was time to move through the desert, they took off the coverings. They took down the tent. And they carried the altar and the basin of water and the table with 12 loaves of bread and the menorah, and the altar of sacrifice, altar of incense. And Aaron and his sons were made priests, and they carried the ark through the desert. Now, when the people of God left the desert, they crossed into the promised land. It was a beautiful place. And in the promised land, David and many of the people of God lived in the holy city of Jerusalem. And David became the king. And when David was the king, he brought the ark to Jerusalem. And he made a tabernacle, a tent for God. Now, David lived in a beautiful house made of stone and wood and gold designs. And one day, David was sitting in his house and he said, "I live in a beautiful house, but God lives in a tent. I will make a beautiful house for God, a special house." And God said, "No, David, you will not build my house. Your son Solomon will build my house." So when Solomon became the king, he built a special house for God. And the people of God helped him. They went to the hills around Jerusalem and found special wood of cypress and cedar. And they found special stones, and they built this beautiful house. Outside, they had the great basin, which was made of bronze and bigger than the one that was in the desert. And they had the great altar of sacrifice, which was also covered with bronze and bigger than the one in the desert. On the outside, they put beautiful gold pillars. And on the inside, were all the things that had been in the tabernacle in the desert. Here was the ark with the 10 best ways to live inside. And a curtain divided the inside room, called the Holy of Holies, from the outside room where the people gathered. And there was the menorah and the altar of incense that filled the room with sweet-smelling smoke, and the table of bread with 12 loaves of bread on it. On the day that the temple was finished, a great light filled the space, and the glory of God shone upon it. And the king came, and the king prayed these words: "O Lord God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth beneath, keeping covenant and showing steadfast love to your servants who walk before you with all their hearts." And then the king prayed that God's name would abide in this place, and it would be a place where people could come to pray and to find justice. Now I wonder what you wonder about this story. Yeah. I wonder where this place might really be.
In the jungle.
Could be. Could be. I wonder how the people of God felt when they left the desert and went to the city of Jerusalem. I wonder where this table might really be with bread. And I wonder where this special lampstand, golden candle holders, might really be. You wonder. I wonder if you have ever seen a large basin of water and where it might really be. You know, when you go to Jerusalem today, you will not find the temple. It has been destroyed. And the ark is missing. But the presence of God and the 10 best ways still live. And I wonder where that might be. I don't know.
Maybe in the jungle.
It could be a jungle. It is a jungle out there.
Is it a jungle?
Could be. We're going to go back to your seats now, but after worship and during the coffee hour time, if you want to come and look at these materials more closely and touch and work with the story figures, you may do so, but we want you to keep them all right here after the worship service during the coffee hour. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. You were wonderful listeners today.
So we are talking. Is this the water?
Yeah, that's the water.
Is it real?
Right.
Is it real?
Yeah, I wonder if it's real. I don't know if it's real. I wonder.
No.
Yeah.
No, look, it's so real.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, now we're going to go back to your seats. Okay.